Hey everybody, this is Daniel. I want to talk about the riots and the protests and the uprisings that are going on around the country. And I want to jump right into it because there's a lot of things I notice that people just aren't understanding about what's going on. And maybe it's because people haven't been there. Maybe it's because people don't know what it's like to suffer because they're black and worry about police or police brutality. Maybe it's a number of those factors, but I want to break this down in a way that I hope people will understand why a lot of things that you're posting and saying you might think are good, you might think are right, you might think are reasonable, but you're missing a lot of key points. So let's jump into it. The first thing I want to talk about is the violence that's going on, the destruction of property, because it seems a lot of you have gotten really upset about that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but it says something when you care much more about that than you do the black people who are killed at the hands of police and have their reputations destroyed as well. So I want to talk about this first. So having been to protests, particularly in Atlanta, and having seen great organizations who put these on and encourage people to be nonviolent and give people regiment and structure, having done it myself as far as being in these protests, this is what I want to say up front. I don't know who is damaging property and who is harming people, but I know a lot of protesters who wouldn't do that. I also see a lot of videos of people who aren't black who are doing that. I see a lot of people who I think are provocateurs who are doing that. I see a lot of people who look like cops doing that or are undercover cops doing that. And why is that important? Because our country has a history of going into legitimate movements and delegitimizing them from the inside so people won't take them seriously. Our government has done this for a long time. So what I want you to understand up front is when you see these stories and your immediate response is, this is terrible, they shouldn't be doing this. Stop and ask yourself, wait, do I have enough information about what's going on to have an opinion? Do I know for sure that it's peaceful protesters doing this? Do I know for sure it's the same people? Do I know for sure that these are even protesters? Are these white supremacists who are hiding in the movement and damaging property so that they could destroy the good name of others who are doing this? Are these angry people whose voices haven't been heard for a long time? Are these undercover cops? Do I know enough to have an opinion about this? Do I know enough to share about this online? That's an important question because I don't think a lot of you know enough to say as much as you are saying, which leads it to the biggest point I want to dig into for the rest of this video and really flesh out. I'm watching a lot of you talk, and it's clear to me that you see what's going on, but you don't understand why these riots and these protests and these uprisings are happening. You don't get it. And for whatever reason. And so I want to do my best to break it down for you. Listen, think about this. People are doing this all over the country and now all over the world. Okay? All over the world, all over the country, people are uprising against the police. Do you think it's in the midst of COVID-19? Do you think this is just because it looks popular? Like, folks, this is not a TikTok trend. People are uprising because police brutality and state violence are happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere. It's happening to us all the time. We have to think about this every single day. Many of you never have to think about this until a story pops up on your news feed. I have to think about this all the time. I have to think about this when I go out at night, even to run an errand. I have to think about this if I go out for a walk at night. You're not thinking about this. And so why are people protesting to this level? Why are people defacing property? Why are they doing this? Not just what they're doing, but why are they doing it? People are doing it because that is the degree of hurt that so many of us have at a country that continually spits on us, steps on us, knees us, ignores us, takes advantage of us, laughs at us, mocks us, dehumanizes us, brutalizes us every single day without rest. That's what we deal with every single day. So some of you say, for example, and this was in Atlanta Mayor Keisha Bottom's speech, other people have said this. People say, well, why don't you just vote? Why don't you participate in the electoral process? Why don't you get out here and do it legitimate ways? Well, let's talk about that. Every single day we are suffering because we are black. And because our society for hundreds of years has reinforced the idea, as I wrote about in one of my previous posts, that black skin is equated to aggression and violence and criminality. Every day, this message, these ideas are reinforced. And not only do these ideas stay in America, they are exported around the world. Talk to black people who have traveled in other countries. They can tell you that they have suffered from this in other countries too. And the root of all of it, beyond local issues that have their own time for discussion, is that America exported all this when it started exporting blackface media. So there's a long history of this. And in that long history, black people have been fighting and pushing to combat it in a nonviolent way through various means, including electoral politics. And let me tell you what happens. We mobilize to vote. And then the other side, which y'all frequently ignore when you chastise us and tell us to go vote, you frequently ignore that the other side, particularly the GOP, mobilizes as well to do everything in their power to prevent us from being able to vote. I didn't say vote easily. I said vote. They do everything possible, whether it's closing down precincts, whether it's making it harder to get the legitimate voter registration, hiding it behind fake election fraud concerns that are not real. They do everything in their power. And they hide behind the bureaucratic reason of, oh, no, we just want to protect voter integrity. No, they don't want people voting against them. They've said it on TV. The President of the United States said this a couple of weeks ago on TV. And he's part of the problem. And so not only do we have people who are consistently mobilizing to prevent us from being able to vote full stop, we talk to candidates to try to get them to take seriously our issues. And we have candidates who just pay us lip service. And then when we do have candidates who listen to us about these issues, do you know what happens? Those candidates get shafted by the Democratic Party, who wants to keep the status quo going and throws us crumbs when we're asking for loaves. When Charlemagne the God, say what you want about him, talks to Biden and is saying, hey, this is what we're looking for as black people. He didn't even ask for the length of policies that Movement for Black Lives and others have posted and are looking for. He just talked about a black woman VP, and Biden chastised him. Before Biden even said the thing about you ain't black, he chastised him and said, this is what all I've done. Why aren't you grateful? That's what Biden said. This is the opposition we face all the time. When an NFL player takes a peaceful knee and, in fact, sits on the sideline, didn't even call attention to it, and then, because of a Green Beret, takes a peaceful knee and then has his livelihood taken away from him, the thing he's been training for his entire life, all because he was talking about this. And America made it quite clear that his opinions, his discussion of this subject wasn't welcome. So let me put it back to you. Our peaceful discussions weren't welcome. Our cries weren't welcome. Our pain wasn't welcome. None of this has ever been welcome. And so then when people are fed up and furious, and you add to that historic unemployment numbers, COVID-19, everything going on. You add all that together and people are fed up and they're done. They're tired of being scared all the time. I know what it's like to be scared all the time. I see a cop car and my blood pressure goes up. I've been stopped by police. We didn't do anything wrong. I don't have a record. And all of a sudden my wife is in the car crying. And you know why? Because she's worried I'm not going to make it home. This is what we live and deal with as black people every single minute of every single day. And there are people who are not black who get it. There are people of color, indigenous people, our comrades in arms. They see it, they understand what we're dealing with, and they get it. But so many of y'all still don't get it. And you know how I know you don't get it? Because you're angrier about the destruction of property that is insured and that can be replaced than you are about black lives that cannot be replaced. Side note, folks, when we talk about victims of state violence and police brutality, please don't just say black men, because Breonna Taylor was an EMT. She was sleeping in her home. She was devoted to healing and helping people, and police broke in with a no-knock warrant and killed her in her sleep because they came to the wrong person's house. Her life matters too. Whether it's her, Rekia Boyd, Sandra Bland, Corin Gaines, it is not just black men who are suffering at the hands of police. Let us make sure that we lift up every name that is suffering in the midst of these times. I also want to touch on the frequent chorus of Dr. King mentions that I'm seeing, because I see a lot of people want to talk about him and they want to say, well, let's do it peaceful like Dr. King. Need I remind you that in return for his peaceful protests, in return for him challenging America to be better, he was murdered. And that reality sank in for so many black people. And it wasn't just him. It was Medgar Evers. We saw Malcolm X murdered. Police went into Fred Hampton's home with his pregnant fiance in there. And they rained over 100 bullets in his home and they killed him after having him drugged through his friend who was an informant and a photographer. You don't know black history enough to keep commenting on our pain and suffering as though you can lecture us. You only bring up Dr. King. You don't bring up Stokely Carmichael. You don't bring up Fred Hampton. You don't bring up Fannie Lou Hamer. You don't bring up Ida B. Wells. You don't bring up these other people because you don't know who they are, because you haven't done your research, because you keep using Dr. King against us. I wish you had this energy when police killed us on the streets. I wish you had this energy before activists and organizers and politicians had to put in blood, sweat, tears, and ground hours to get this on your news feed. Because don't mistake, they have to do a lot of work just to get it in front of your face so you could decide whether you'll keep scrolling or not. I'm tired of you throwing Dr. King in our faces, because Dr. King was challenged. He was just one of many who was challenging America to be better, and America killed him because America didn't want to be better. And if you really want to go there, let's talk about the fact that Colin Kaepernick did a peaceful kneel, intelligently explained why he felt this way. We have grassroots organizers all around the country. Honestly, a lot of them being just black women and black queer folks who are always pushing the front lines for us. Do you listen to them? Do you know their names? No, you don't, because you don't want to. See, the reality is you are grasping for every single thing you can to shut us up, because that is what you're doing all the time. We are always suffering and you're always trying to tell us to shut up. So you reach for Dr. King, you reach for property damage, you reach for whatever you can to get us to shut up. Because the truth is, you don't care as much about our suffering as you think you do. You don't want peace. You want quiet. And those are not, nor will ever be, the same things. So I hope this video finds you safe. I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves. If you have been making the mistakes that I highlighted in this video, I hope you will stop. You will educate yourself. Google's available. You could start with reading Letters from a Birmingham Jail by Dr. King, since you want to keep mentioning his name so often. And you could do your research to understand all the things that black people have been trying to do and continue to do to get justice for ourselves so that we are not murdered in the streets, and all the different ways that America has seen fit to ignore us. Please do that, because we're tired of educating you, because frankly, it shouldn't be our jobs. Like, we are the oppressed here. Why do we have to spend emotional labor and hours educating you on how people who look like you are oppressing us? So thank you so much for watching this video. Please stay safe. Take care of your mental health. Do what you got to do to take care of yourself. And I'll see you next time.